Think your lashes have hit their limit? Discover limitless length and full volume with Maybelline Sky High Mascara. The Flex Tower brush bends to volumize and extend every single lash from root to tip. And the lightweight bamboo-infused formula makes lashes feel weightless. Now in 8 bold shades so you can take your lashes to new heights every day. Visit Maybelline.com to shop Sky High Mascara now.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite, obey your thirst.
Welcome to Why We Roll,
a tabletop role-playing game design podcast by the Stillfleet Studio.
We're your hosts, Chris Pickett, creator of the historical fantasy game Dance Macabre,
and Wythe Marshall, creator of the political sci-fi game Stillfleet.
Through the show, we hope to amplify new creative voices.
We chat with different indie TTRPG designers, talking through a range of questions that are pertinent to many designers, players, and GMs.
We hope to showcase fresh and even challenging ideas about what makes imagination-based games so powerful.
Before we introduce today's guest, a reminder. If you enjoy this episode, please consider supporting the show and all of our games over at patreon.com/Stillfleet.
Okay, let's find out why we roll. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Why We Roll, the tabletop role-playing game chat show from the Stillfleet Studio. As ever, I am Chris Pickett, co-host, producer, and I'm joined with my other co-host, the wonderful Wythe Marshall.
Hello, hello. Excited to talk to Anthony.
Yeah. Today we're both very excited. We have Anthony Kurza here on the pod with us. Anthony is an educator and a tabletop games creator, an auteur, if you will. How's it going, Anthony?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So for folks who don't, already know your work, folks who aren't familiar with it, with you and what you've done, can you give us just a brief intro? Who is Anthony Kurza?
Yeah. Wow. What a big question. With what is going to be a very small response. So, my name is Anthony Kurza. I am just first and foremost a higher ed specialist in many regards, whether it's teaching, whether it's working in student support. That's kind of my main, my day job, if you will. But the thing that I'm really passionate about, the thing that kind of gets me up in the morning is I love tabletop role-playing games. That's why we're here, right? But I love putting them in an educational setting. So in terms of my work within TTRPGs, I've created, first and foremost, I created a simplified D6 system called S.A.N, which stands for simple, accessible, and narrative, with the hope that educators that were looking to incorporate TTRPGs within their classroom would have a simplified system that would allow them to play these types of games with larger groups or smaller groups and have that like really narrative focus engagement opportunity with their classes. And that's kind of what kickstarted my I guess we could call it an obsession at this point, my obsession with TTRPGs and game mechanics and trying to stretch the bounds of, kind of what we're doing in the industry and what kind of games are out there. And since then, I've really only put out a lot of like smaller stuff, modules for S.A.N and things like that, as I'm working on larger projects that hopefully, fingers crossed, if all things go well, will be coming out within the next year or so. So just trying to stay on top of it. And that's just a little bit about me.
Nice. Well, that's a lot going on, and a lot to dig into. So I hope to get to S.A.N as well as more on the higher ed front. So Anthony, I guess the traditional, second question after we do intros is always, how did you get into RPGs? Like what was your first formative experience? What led you down this path, dare we say, shared obsession?
Well, it's so funny that that you asked that, because I was actually just reflecting on that earlier today. I was thinking about coming onto this podcast, and I was like, yeah, it's been a wild journey. It hasn't been a long journey. I think my first actual experience with TTRPGs was probably 2017, maybe. So not super long ago. And just like so many people out there, of course, it was D&D 5e. I had a friend come by and was like, hey, I got a group together, we're going to play some Dungeons and Dragons, do you want to play? And my first question was, what is that? And then they kind of explained like, oh, this is what it is. And they gave me some reference points, as I think a lot of people getting into TTRPGs, their first exposure is going to be the media that they see online. So whether they're looking at big names like Critical Role, Dimension 20, or even some of the smaller stuff that might be on YouTube, I think that's where a lot of people are getting their first introduction to this style of games nowadays. And that's definitely where I got my first introduction. And I played it for the first time. And I think when we played it for the first time, we had this whole the game master had this whole campaign set out, and we were at a table with people that had never played before, myself included. And I think within the first 5 minutes, we completely ruined his campaign. So so I think for me, like that was such a catalyst to be like, oh, I can do whatever I want. Like this is like truly an opportunity for me to tell a story with a group of people, but also like tell it in a way that I want to tell it, not in a way that, when you play like a video game where there is a set ending for you, there is a set path for you to go down. I don't have to be as linear as that. I can tell whatever story I want. I can be whoever I want. And I think from there, it just kind of like lit a fire for me that I just became really enamored with the idea of that level of autonomy, that level of agency to be able to make those choices in a way that I had never been able to engage with before.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. I think I'm curious, to I guess just a little bit about your background as an education specialist and as an educator yourself. Was there like an obvious intersection, like when you've played that first game of D&D where you were like, oh, this connects to something I'm already doing? Or was that something that kind of came later?
That's definitely something that came later. I think, as I left my undergrad, and my undergrad was in music, and it had absolutely nothing to do with games, had nothing to do with education. It was music. And then I was graduating. I realized, oh, I don't know if a career in music is right for me, which was a problem because I had a bachelor's degree in it. But then I realized that, the best parts of my college experience were, the administrators that I worked with, were the jobs that I had on campus, was the engagement that I had with the other students. So that's kind of how I led into higher education. And I think probably 2 or 3 years into my career is when I started making that connection. Like I played TTRPGs for the first time. I realized how important that was for me. And then as I was working with students and as I was helping, kind of develop these skills that we talk about in higher education administration, right? Develop these, this identity development for the students that we work with. I started to realize the connection of, oh, I played this game and I made a character that very clearly represented an aspect of myself that I wanted to explore a little bit more, right? I wanted to tease that out in a way that felt safe. And I started making that connection of like, okay, if I can do that in a game like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever TTRPG, then maybe there's an opportunity to kind of take that concept, put it on a more macro scale with the students that we work with. So I think it was a couple years into it that I started making that connection. And then once I did, that's when I started to find the community of people that were doing that work.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, as someone who has taught very briefly, just a couple course really modules, classes here and there with games in higher ed, it is something kids respond to, but I'm really curious to hear not only about, obviously your experience as an expert and someone doing this kind of day in, day out, refining it, working with different cohorts, and maybe also seeing the effects of COVID and like a fascist takeover of the United States. Like, how does that change what imagination means and why it matters? But just even more broadly, like you said, there's other people doing it. And that's something that I also don't think occurred to me when I first was writing games and was like, oh, I'll publish something fine, that it could kind of intersect with my life as an academic. Like, it just felt like, yeah, academics, almost 100% of them. It's like, have you ever seen the Venn diagram of Wu-Tang Clan and things not to fuck with? Like, it's just a circle. So I feel
right. Yeah.
it's the same way with academics and D&D. It's like academics and people who've played 5e. It's the same group. But it never occurred to me that was like a career or something. Like, we also had on a really cool therapist, right? Clinical therapist who's using D&D, really with kids, younger kids. But it's those kinds of crossovers where it's like, oh, of course that makes sense. And of course, you're going to develop your own games and streamline it and not run like the Matt Mercer style epic narratives when you're dealing with whether it's 8-year-olds or 18-year-olds. Like, they're not, that's not what they're there for. So I want to, I have so many questions, but I guess one of them is just, what does that broader community look like maybe to set the scene? And how did you kind of approach from the, really from the beginning, like, how did you approach, the students you already were working with, or your thoughts that you already had on education, right? Coming in as someone in that world with, that merger with your obsession. With TTRPGs.
Yeah, it was, I will admit, like, it was a really like steep slope. Like, it went 0 to 100 super quick. I started getting these ideas, and really during my grad school time when I was getting my master's, I started working on like projects for class that had that connection, that I then I made those connections, and I did some of the research. I started learning the names of some of the academics that were doing the work. And then I would take those things that I did and I would bring them out into my job. And I was very, some would say fortunate, others would stay stressed out, when I was working full time and doing my master's part time. So I was doing a little bit of both. But I feel very fortunate because I had the opportunity to take the things I was doing in the classroom, the projects and stuff that I was working on, and then immediately apply it to my job, So for example, one of the big projects during my final year of grad school was working on a TTRPG that now we're working with another company to actually publish. That it's 7 modules that teaches the social change model of leadership development. It's a model of leadership development in which basically we want to develop skills that allow leaders to go out into the world being more socially conscious of their impact, not only within themselves, within a group, but also within their community. So each session handles a different aspect of that and teaches that, that entire model. So I was really excited about that. Right. And I wanted to, and then immediately brought it out into my job. And I was very fortunate to have, kind of leadership that was down for me to do kind of whatever. I was like, hey, I want to run a TTRPG. And they said, okay. Their first question was, what's a TTRPG? And then their second was like, okay, how much money do we have to spend? So I put a small group together, of students that were interested, that just put their interest in. And, I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. This was an original story that I had come up with. I really didn't know, but we began to run it. And the session that we ran was all about the idea of commitment, right? When we commit to something, what does that mean? How do we take that? How do we take the idea of commitment and put it into action, right? So we tell this story, and it's a great time. Everyone has fun. We're laughing. We're having fun. At the end, we do a debrief, and at that debrief, we're talking about the connection between what happened to the characters in the game session, and what that means for them moving out into the real world. And I was so surprised it was this moment where I was like, oh, did this actually work? Because they were actually talking about these ideas of commitment and turning commitment into action. That was kind of the hope of the original session. And then to add on top of that, now again, this session was just about commitment. I wasn't trying to get any other educational outcome out of this. But at the end of it, we had this group of strangers that I never met before. As they're leaving, they're exchanging numbers. They're saying, hey, we should get together and play some more later. And I started to recognize, like, oh, not only did we learn about commitment, not only did we talk about turning commitment into action, but also now these people have built connections with other people at the university that they're going to feel comfortable with playing games. They're going to feel comfortable developing friendships with. And that was something for me that was incredibly special, And I think after that, it really did just like, expedite my passion for what I'm doing here. You know, I think it really expedited the goal of me pushing this forward, not only as an academic, but as, you know, just as a creative person in general. And from there, I've just come across just more examples of how these types of games can benefit not only with a dedicated educational outcome, but also with the things that also come along with playing a TTRPG, like building connection and critical thinking and community building, right? Like it all connects at the end, which is really cool.
Yeah, I feel like that moment of realization is so exciting. And it's something that, I think Wythe and I have experienced with like con games, or like we just wrapped up like a 4-week long campaign at the 20-sided store here in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, where we were playing with 8 players that we didn't know from Adam. You know, they signed up through the store, but to so quickly see people get excited about the same thing and to talk about the content of the game and like what happened, and just like the bonds that get formed are so fast and so versatile in a way. And yeah, I don't know. It's a magical moment. I'm really happy that you experienced that. I'm happy we get to experience that. It's really beautiful.
Well, yeah, and like you said, it's different when you're doing it with players who are there to play a game already. They're already TTRPG pilled in some ways, versus maybe college students who might. I guess it's a question, Anthony, and maybe again you can give us at least a few more specifics. And I'm not trying to get you to, out yourself or get in trouble in any way, but like, is this an elective? Is it the kind of thing where like, oh, we need to take something, and I can either take like the novel, or
does it fulfill a creative arts credit for you?
Yeah, it's like 19th century art history, or I can take Slaying Goblins, the class with cool Professor
Goblin Slaying 101.
So it's I think that's like a question, but in any event, it is like they're not necessarily already committed to RPGs as a hobby, right? Mm-hmm. So I am curious again if you have any specifics about either, again, kind of the setup, how do you enroll students, and just any maybe anecdotes, just transformative experiences beyond the broad reaction being positive, but like, ways that you've had students come back to this or pick it up as a hobby or take what you did and run with it, or point things out to you. Because I will say, to that point Chris just made, it's like, it's kind of the common goal, I think, with education in RPGs, is you want the whole room to be a collective where everyone's making up stuff together and having a good time, and in a way learning together. And obviously learning in the context of saving Constantinople from mutant zombie horde is different from learning about like leadership and psychology, and but it's still, it's like, the kind of group think. So I'm curious, just to wherever you want to take that, anecdotes.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, you think it's different? It's a lot more connected than you might think. There's a lot of connection that could be made for sure.
Yeah.
So my role at the university, I have 2 roles, right? My first one is a college life coach, and that is that I work with students one-on-one that are part of certain populations that are at a higher risk of attrition, right? A higher risk of dropping out after their first year, right? Students that are coming from out of state, right? Students that are living off campus their first year. We ran the numbers and we saw, okay, these are students that might not feel as connected to the university. So we want to provide an extra layer of support. So that's me. That's my first job. My main job is to work with students to help them feel connected to the university. My second is an adjunct professor, and I teach a class called Introduction to Tabletop Role-Playing Game Design, which, man, oh man, trying to pitch that was a journey. But this class is part of an initiative known as Engage 100, and it's a program that is run through I think most of the public universities within Florida, in which students within their first year enroll in a class with the whole purpose of getting them connected to a community, getting them connected to the university. So we built this class with the understanding that, one, this was going to be a niche class, right? We knew that, and 2, people were probably going to think this was a board game class, so we were going to have to explain that one. But we developed it with the idea that, okay, we want them to learn about building tabletop role-playing games, but we also want to make sure by the end of it that they feel connected to the university, they feel connected to the community. Even if that means they're connected to me, I'm part of the university, so that counts. And maybe they made one friend in the class. Great, you connected to the community. So finding ways to develop that was definitely at the forefront when we were developing it. With that said, once we started running the class, we're going into our third semester. So we ran it in the fall, ran it in the spring. Now we're running it in the fall again. I'm really excited. When we ran it in the fall, the class was incredible. I mean, we had students that had a varied relationship with TTRPGs. Some of them very well versed, some of them not very well versed at all. But I think having that was really interesting because some of the students that were really well versed in TTRPGs had an opportunity to kind of develop community with those that might not be as familiar, bring them into their world and say, look at how cool this is, right? Like, yeah, you've got your professors up there and I'm speaking for them now. And they're like, yeah, they're really cool, but let me show you kind of some of the things that I'm working on. So we were able to build community that way, which is really awesome. Now the second semester, didn't go as well. The second semester, I would say, maybe 10 to 15% had experience with TTRPGs. And so that was really interesting for us, myself. And at the time I had a co-teacher named Corbin Null, who's kind of my partner in crime in a lot of things. So we needed to kind of rethink how we structured this class. We had a group of people that had really never experienced TTRPGs before. We were a little nervous, but something incredible happened, right? So, during the third or fourth week, we introduced students to a game, right? In the first semester, we introduced them to the BRP by Chaosium, right? That generalized system that they could kind of mix and match and make. And since then, because I built the S.A.N system, we've been using the S.A.N system because at the end of the class, in groups, they develop their own TTRPG and they pitch their TTRPG like they're doing a sales pitch, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
So they pitch it to us. But in order to make sure that they don't get super, super bogged down in the specifics of a mechanic, because let's be honest, you could get bogged down in the specifics of a mechanic, we wanted to give them an option. They didn't have to go with this, but we wanted to give them an option to say, hey, you can use this S.A.N system, simplified, easy, and really focus on the creative aspect of it, so that you feel really good about your pitch. If you want to use something else, you're more than welcome to. I'm not gonna flunk you for not using S.A.N. But because of that, in the third or fourth week, we introduced them to the system. In this case, it was S.A.N. And the way that we do it is we obviously talk about the mechanics themselves, but then we run a scenario with the class. Now, we have a class of 20, so we can't do a small group where everyone has their own character and it's, a nice intimate setting, right? We had to get a little bit creative. So what we decided to do was we were going to run a scenario, brief scenario, 45 minutes, in which everybody in the class was controlling one character. So we had to introduce voting. We had to, like say, okay, what kind of action do you want to do? Everyone had to vote on what to do. So it felt like everyone had agency, still had some level of agency, So in the second semester, where maybe the connection wasn't as strong with TTRPGs, we ran it. And it was a small scenario in which an adventurer goes into a sunken temple in the middle of a swamp, and they're looking for this magical book, and they have to dodge traps, and they get stuck in a time loop, and it's very interesting, and I like it. But it was so amazing to watch a group of 20 people that had never played a TTRPG before, about halfway through, start to immediately get it. It was the same thing that I experienced the first time I played TTRPGs, right? Where they were throwing out ideas and they were like, oh, can he do this? Can he do that? And I was like, he can do whatever he wants. This is a TTRPG. And to watch as they immediately started to get it and do probably some of the craziest things I've ever seen, right? They were like, oh, does he have X-ray vision? And I'm like, does it make sense for him to have X-ray vision? And they were like, yeah. And I said, great, he has X-ray vision, right? I was like, let your imagination run free. You know what I mean? And to watch as they immediately started to understand that, like, oh, kind of sky's the limit for me. I can have this character do whatever. And then get to the end of the adventure, and the hook being that the adventurer finds the book, it touches the book, and then gets transported back in time. It was a trap this whole time. So to narrate that and to watch as their faces kind of lit up and say, no, wait, what happens next? What's going on? Like, they wanted to play more, and we were at the end of time. So I said, all right, have a nice time. I'll see you next week, but they wanted to play and explore this world more. For me, was incredible. And because in the previous class, they got it, right? They already understood TTRPGs. They understood what it was about. So it was still fun. It was a fun activity to run, but they already understood. They got it. But to have students that didn't understand it before understand it and want to do it more, for me, that was such an incredible moment, especially coming from a place of like, I don't know how this class is going to go because none of these people have experience with TTRPGs. So I'm a long-winded way of saying that, being that the populations of students that we work with are varied and they have varied experiences with TTRPGs. But in every experience that I've had so far, there's always been a moment where eventually they got it. And that's been really special for me as an educator, but even more so just as a human being, because this is something that I care about. So getting to see other people start to care about it too has been really awesome.
So you're writing all the material, is that right? Like you're writing a whole sort of new adventures for this purpose. It's a purpose
Absolutely.
built. It's not like, oh, I'm going to run Curse of Strahd or whatever with college students. It's like, no, what do college students need? So can you tell us to get into design aspect a bit, before we get into the S.A.N, again, regardless of whether it's BRP or S.A.N or something else, what is your approach to that? Like what kinds, and I know maybe you're doing different classes at this point, but generally what are you thinking? You're like, okay, I need to write something for college students. How do you go about that? And maybe how is that different from writing for, your friends or for publication for a general audience?
Yeah. With education, there's a lot of different formulas out there for making a TTRPG session specifically with an educational outcome in mind. The way that I do it when it's a small group, right, and time is not really of the essence, time is not necessarily a huge factor in it. My thought process first and foremost is to identify what that outcome is, right? What's the thing that I want them to take away from this session? What's the main thing? There's always going to be other things that they take away, but what's the main thing I want them to take out of this session? Once I do that, I really want to make sure that there's some sort of activity involved with that during the game session, and that could be a million different things. So, for example, I wrote a scenario that was all about identifying the differences between primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. So the whole idea is the outcome is I want them to walk away having a clear understanding of what the difference between these three things are. So the next thing is I want to develop an activity that they can do during the session. And that could be anything. It can be a combat, but I think a lot of the time having some kind of structured activity in the, with the, let's say, the cover of the adventure over it, I think usually works out best. So, for example, with the sources one, basically the activity is they have to get in a vault door, and the only way they can get through this vault door is if they can correctly label, 6 different handouts that they get, right? Is this a primary, secondary, tertiary source? And throughout the adventure, they're collecting these sources, and on the sources have like, this is what the vault code is, or this is what someone said the vault code was, or this is historians say that this is a vault code, you know what I mean? So in there has the code that they need to get through, but they need to correctly identify what is the primary source to be able to actually get through to the other side, Once you do that, then it's really all about adding flavor. So for example, for the sources one, this is a sci-fi scenario in which these group of adventurers dock on this abandoned archive on a distant moon far away. I think I called it Theta Prime or something. So they get a dock on this archive, and they are solving a mystery of like, where did all these people go? This archive was just abandoned, and they find out that they actually get to kind of choose how they get to choose the ending of the adventure, like how these people ended up disappearing. Was it, faulty AI? Was it, a fire that got started they had to abandon? Was it, did they not leave at all? Are they still there? You know what I mean? They get to kind of decide that through playing this adventure. But that's kind of adding the flavor of it, right? Then you can start to, as a creator, really stretch that creative mind to say, I've got my outcomes. Now, how do I wrap it in something that is fun and engaging? And then, of course, that last step kind of involves playing it, but it also involves the immersion aspect of it. We want to make sure that whether it's in our writing or in our actual playing of the game, that we are being as immersive as possible, because that is where, I don't know if you've heard the term bleed, the idea of like, yeah, exactly, right. The idea of, aspects of yourself inevitably go into your character that you create, and that can happen vice versa. The things that happen to your character can then bleed out, and you can do that as a game creator, as a game runner. You can actually help them navigate that transition in and out of bleed, so that they're taking the right things away from the game session. So that last part is developing that immersion, so they feel immersed in the process, and that maximizes kind of the bleed that they feel as they move out into the debrief part of the game session. So that's if time's not a factor. If time's a factor, we kind of have to, again, it's very similar. Like, you have to figure out what the outcome is, right? You got to figure out where we're going, and then really it's how do we fit it into, in the case of this class, how do I fit it into 45 minutes? So I have to craft an adventure that can fit 45 minutes, but doesn't go too far over, doesn't go too far under, so that gets a little bit more complicated, but that's roughly kind of where we're at.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's such a it's such a succinct execution of mixing pedagogy with play. It's really, really, I don't know. It's just cool to hear about, frankly. I am curious, are the kind of determined outcomes that you have for these sessions, is this something that you're kind of choosing like group by group, class by class, like, like these players need or want this kind of outcome and experience? Or is it something where you have kind of even like a loose curriculum that you're going off of, like through the semester?
Honestly, it's a little bit of both. It's partly as a creator, as a game runner, as an educator, part of it is witnessing what is needed in the moment. Like it was kind of said, we're living in very strange times, right? So what are the things, and we can say that for many times throughout history, but like, we are living in very strange times. So what are the things that as a creator, I feel like would be beneficial for a player to take away, and, in terms of, doing it for a class, then that probably follows a little bit more of a curriculum that follows, based on where we're at, based on what lesson needs to be learned at what week, depending on what class is being taught. But just as a higher education professional, as someone that just wants to run games for students, kind of outside of the classroom setting, what are the things that I'm noticing around me? Because I'm in it. I'm working in the college sphere. I'm working in this environment. What are the things that I'm seeing that could be beneficial for students to help develop more? And you mentioned, Wife, you mentioned COVID a little bit earlier, coming out of COVID, one of the big things we saw was that students were having such a hard time connecting with each other. They had spent so long indoors, especially during like key developmental years where they learn about this socialization that's so important, that they were coming to college. And the first question that I would get asked, working with them one-on-one, was, how do I make friends? Right? Like, I don't know how to like just talk to someone and have that conversation, because I haven't necessarily had to do it. So, with that concept, I saw that and I said, okay, how do I develop a session that is all about building connection, not only just building connection within the group that's playing, but how do the characters learn that skill as well through it? Is it, they're going to, it's like a social combat kind of scenario where they're going to like the governor's ball or something, and they have to sneak their way in. So they have to learn how to like have these conversations and, and kind of charm their way into this ball because they didn't get an invitation, right? Like, so how do we build these communication skills in the light of something, that definitely they missed out on? Now we're moving out of these like, COVID times, and we're still seeing some of the remnants of that. But I definitely now, we're starting to shift into, like you said, it's a very strange time. We're starting to shift into, I would say much deeper conversations of, how do I make sure I'm a good person? How do I make sure I'm doing right by other people? How do I make sure that I am contributing positively to society? Those are bigger questions to ask, but that also means that we can dive really headfirst into some really memorable and incredible TTRPGs. So it's, kind of a double-edged sword, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I mean, it's like I made a game thinking, man, I'm so disappointed at myself for being just a middle-aged guy with a boring, white-collar job and not starting the revolution. And it's like, wait, no, that's like all the people I know feel sort of the same. We're not really doing all the things. Oh, we should go to that protest. We should like,
Yeah.
pick up that hobby that would be, leading towards self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
And in some ways it was like, oh, launch this game. And then it's like, wait, what if everything gets better and no one wants to play these kind of dark games, and in some ways it's this roller coaster where you're at the top and you're going down and you're like, well, at least as bad as things get, people are more and more interested in sort of simulating, modeling, and using these experiences where there is bleed. It is kind of you, but it's also not you, and you have license to do other things to explore really dark social change and what ifs and sort of what would I do given superpowers, right? I mean, again, even if it doesn't actually help the next day you wake up, go to work, go to class, but in that moment, it is cathartic, and it does, I think, exteriorize or bring you to kind of conversation with yourself and really with others is the key point, with other people.
Yeah.
And it is funny, the COVID thing, this is really just an anecdote. I'll turn it over to Chris. You probably have an actual question here, but yesterday we did a big stream of our sci-fi game, and we have 3 GMs. We have this West Marches campaign, and we did 3 longer sessions this summer that were streamed. It's a bi-weekly game. It's been going on now since the beginning of this year. And it was really funny that one of the sort of villain I was playing in the next arc called on sort of a advanced computer like cube, just like a Quicksilver cube. One of the main sort of PCs who's been, playing, she's been playing all the time. And they had a long conversation that was very tense, but it was like neither wanted to hang up, and it was very obviously like an improv, like COVID phone call trope of like the villain who wanted all these things, like also was so lonely and just couldn't think of how to end this conversation. And it was something that was one of the GMs were like talking to me, and we're like, man, this is like eerie. This is like I have had this conversation with like a sort of frenemy or just like a weird aunt or you get in and it's interesting how these games, even when you didn't plan that, they kind of pick up on and reproduce social sort of genres or ways that you've been in the past. And they kind of bring that out of you. And so I think there's something to that in exercising those demons together in a classroom setting. I can pick up what you're laying down, Anthony, with the intentionality that you as an instructor are bringing and saying, okay, what do I want to do with this 45 minutes? What do I want to do with the next 45 minutes? Which is a little different because as a GM and as a writer, I'm always thinking, what is the cool story beat I want to tell? Not how can I help like in this case, a younger person who's at risk of failing out of college or whatever, you know what I mean? Like grow. They're different tasks, but I can see that like, okay, there's an intention. So Chris, do you have questions, thoughts? Sorry, I'm just kind of rambling.
Oh, I mean, this isn't really a question, just kind of an errant thought more than anything. I mean, I'm curious, Anthony, like, well, I guess it is a question. I'm curious, Anthony, like, we somehow lived through COVID. We've been moving through the social strangeness that has come out of that. But then, you also see, the rise of generative AI. You've got ChatGPT. I was reading a study yesterday about AI psychosis, where people are becoming so addicted to using AI as therapy or as a friend or, any of that kind of stuff. So I'm curious if you've seen that reflected in the classroom as well. I can't get this image out of my mind of like NYU grads holding up their laptops with ChatGPT on it at their graduation ceremony. It's very chilling to me. But I guess the other part of the thought as well is just that, the truly special thing about TTRPGs, and I think probably about your class and, just all of these experiences, is that like people do crave that human connection. And, people are asking, well, how can I make friends? How can I be a good person in this incredibly confusing world? It makes sense to me that would come up through the course of play and through the course of your class. So yeah, I guess the question is like, I don't know, has it gotten better since COVID? Have you seen a positive direction for that? Or is it just, I don't know, is it stagnating? I'm not sure where I'm going with that.
No, I hear that. And so first with AI, right? I think that is such a hot topic right now. I think in most industries, but in obviously in higher education and TTRPGs, right? These two industries that I care about and I spend my time looking into it's a very hot topic, right? When we talk about higher education, right? There's so much research being done on like first off, what are the effects of AI, right? What are the effects of utilizing AI in a classroom setting? How does that kind of stall the learning process, or how in some cases does it help the learning process? And honestly, we're seeing both, right? We're seeing people that, yes, are using it as an excuse not to do the work, which is bad. And the issue from that arises in that there's no reliable, I guess is the best word I could use. There's no reliable way to detect AI at the current moment. You have things like you have software that comes out that says, "Oh, we can detect if this paper's AI," and the truth is, like, they might be able to. We just don't know. We just don't know yet, and there's not enough. In my opinion, there's not enough research out there on the software that's being put out to confidently say, yes, this can detect that this is 100% AI, but on the other side of it, I have seen students that historically have struggled in the classroom. And as someone that also historically struggled in the classroom, I was a terrible student. Oh, I was an awful student, but to see a student that historically struggles in the classroom be able to take all the notes that they took in class, run it through AI and say, can you help me summarize this? Can you help me make sense of this, as a way to help them study for this test? Like, that has been beneficial. I have seen students find success in the classroom utilizing AI as a tool, and it's hard to say because, you can't have one without the other. Like, people are going to benefit, but of course with the benefits, people are going to abuse that. Right. I think right now what I'm seeing in the classroom is, from my perspective, a lot of the projects that we do, I work very hard to make them creative projects. So it's a little bit harder to use AI to do some of these things that we have working on. Like, it's a little hard to use AI to create an entire TTRPG, right? Like, that's, it's not impossible. It just is a little difficult. Including the art, including all this other stuff, especially with AI art. Like, while it is getting better, we can still tell it's AI. You know what I mean? We can still tell. You know what I mean? So
in most cases, although that is
yes,
getting harder and harder, right?
Of course, absolutely. As it continues to progress, it is going to get harder. So, and that's why some of this like AI detection stuff, like, there needs to be more advancement on that, because we need to be able to make those distinguish, especially as consumers. As it gets harder and harder for us to make those detections, we're going to need to rely on software and software programs to be able to make that detection for us. But with that said, even in my class, like, I'm still catching AI, right? I'm still getting it, and it puts you in a very difficult spot, because you acknowledge it and you say, hey, this was AI. And you can go through a formalized process to say, hey, they used AI on this project. But because there's no reliable source to be able to detect it, it's hard for those cases to kind of resolve. They kind of stay in limbo for a while, because the technology is not there yet to actually prove without a shadow of a doubt that this was AI. So it's tough. It's tough. What I do in my class, though, and I'll tell you this, what I do in my class is, the first thing I do is I acknowledge that it's an option, right? I say, listen, like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like ChatGPT doesn't exist, right? That would be foolish of me. All that I can ask is that as you are going through this course and as you are developing your games, take the time to do it yourself, because at the end of it, you are going to feel so much more proud of that product. And I'm finding other ways to incentivize too, to say like, oh, like, if you really like this, let's work together to see how you can independently publish it. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to like take this to the next step, if you really like the direction this game is going in, let's get you connected to an artist in town that can help you with the art, and then you can take the time to publish it on whatever, on itch, on whatever you want to publish it on, so that they take ownership of the process. And I think that's a huge way to kind of overcome that,
Right.
Kind of AI dependency is encourage them to take ownership.
Yeah,
I love
really
that,
awesome.
and I love the idea of encouraging them to work with artists and other people and see the benefit in that and learn. Because to your point, I do think I mean, I don't think I've given up in that. I think we can also just blow up the data centers at some point. But with climate, it'll happen. It'll just melt down. But for now, it is a little bit fait accompli, where like it's becoming kind of impossible. And one reason, I'm less enthused about teaching, even though I love students, is that issue of when you work in the writing disciplines. If I have them write a paper, knowing that so many students will be using ChatGPT and I can't really tell, depending what and it just becomes harder and harder to be like, okay, go home, do research, right? I teach history and anthropology. It's like, go home and do research all term, and then just make some bullshit the last day with a computer. Yeah, that's fun. But so, I love that idea of trying to show them the positives, right? The corrective is not necessarily like just yelling at them, trying to fail them all, but being like, hey, there actually are other benefits that you may not understand or have seen because you haven't had the opportunity, but let me try to give you that opportunity. So super cool,
Yeah.
Anthony.
Well, and
yeah,
oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Oh,
we have a cool question in the chat I want to ask you, but go ahead and respond to that, and then I might redirect to this question if you're open to it.
What I was going to say is another way that we've kind of brought this home is that we a couple semesters we've brought in his name is Chris Burdett. He's a Tallahassee local. He's done art for Wizards of the Coast with Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. He's done FX work on Angel, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all these like crazy stuff. So we had him, and I met him at a con, and I was like, oh, you're in Tallahassee, awesome, cool. So anyway, I had him come to class and kind of give a spiel about his career, and part of that was talking about AI, and to hear it from an artist, I think is so profoundly beneficial. I know it was for me, and I know it was for the students, to hear the impacts of AI on their work and the things that they're able to do. I think was just another way to like drive that home, to say like, oh, like, yeah, you can use AI, but also look at what that's impacting. This is like right in front of you right now. This is someone that is impacted by that.
Like it's almost like the buy this book or I'll shoot this dog. It's like, don't use AI or else you're putting this nice old man out of business. He's going to be homeless. Yeah.
This extremely talented, nice middle-aged man. What do? You want him to live in a cardboard box? What's wrong with you?
You hate this man?
You want to
Why
kill
do you
him?
hate
What?
this man, Chris?
Why do you want him to starve?
That's one reason, we do this live drawing live stream every 2 weeks also, just to shout out more stuff we're throwing out there. And one reason that I think that is powerful, that it was not necessarily the only reason to do it, but it was just, it's cool to see artists draw live things that, you're seeing it, right? It's not AI because you're seeing someone do it and you're seeing them make corrections or make decisions, and you can ask them questions. And there's something so basic and profound and simple about watching someone kind of work. It's almost like, it's like watching Grandpa whittle. It's kind of meditative. It could be anything. It happens to be my friend, Ethan drawing a shark made of moss, or my friend Tony drawing a squirrel with a hammer trying to kill the shark. But, it's actually very meditative just to watch someone do that and figure it out. And you see a line become a foot, become a shark. Yeah. So anyway, we do have a question in the chat I wanted to ask, and then maybe I'll turn it over to Chris, and then maybe we'll head toward wrapping up.
We need a
but
sound
our buddy
button.
Vex, who's great, we do need a sound button, yeah. We did a Vex, mnemonic, sound
Vex
button.
drop.
So our buddy Vex, who's a great game designer themselves, has asked you, question from chat. Sometimes when you mechanicalize a concept, the game becomes not about that concept because it doesn't play out in narrative anymore. This is one of the hardest things to put into words and to teach people in TTRPG design. Is this a topic you cover in your course? And if so, how do you make it accessible as a high-level concept to people who are new to design? So I love the specific question, but I also want to add just generally that ending bit. I mean, how do you generally do, game design and teach game design and work with students who, as you said, may have never played these games or, pursued sort of a creative outlet like this? So,
yeah, I mean, and that's such a great question too, because as I think we all know, like, creating a game is so nuanced, and sometimes the concept that we start with is completely different by the time we finish, and that's great. I think that's great. I think that's a natural part of the creative process. And I think, I think that in the long run, whether we're getting feedback from other people or it's just the voices in our own heads, as we change things, it just makes it more fleshed out and better. I think we have types of conversations in that class, and we don't have like a dedicated module specifically to something as, like that per se. But as we get to the end of the class, right, as we get to the end of the semester, and they're really at this point heavy working on their games in their groups, we take time, myself, if it's just me, then it's just me. If it's me and my, and Corbin, we take time to sit down with each group and say, okay, let's let's talk about where we started and let's talk about where we are. I think that's such an important conversation to have. Where did you start? Like, what were the first ideas that you came up with, and where are you at right now? And we kind of track that linearly to say, okay, how did it get to this point? Because I think as you go through your college experience, and as you finish college, go out into the real world, that's not the last time. While we experience it making games, that happens in a lot of different professions in which something from concept to realization changes completely and changes entirely. So it's important to be able to track how that's changed and shifted over time, especially if you get to a point where, and I've certainly experienced this, you get to a point where you've been working on a project for so long and you've changed it so much, and you get to a point where you're like, oh wait, no, I don't like this. And then you have to think back like, oh, what was the thing that I really liked, and try to get back to that iteration that was like really awesome. You know what I mean? To kind of branch off from there. So it's so important to take the time to track that. And that's something that I think for us in the class, we're teaching that in a more hands-on way. It's not like, oh, I'm going to sit here and lecture to you about keeping track of things. It's like, no, you guys are stuck at this one area of building your game. Let's backtrack and say, like, where did we stop liking it? You know what I mean? And kind of branch off from there. So I think that's kind of where my mind goes. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that answered the question.
It sounds good to me. I mean, I think, Vex responds, oh yeah, getting people to realize they aren't where they were planning to be with a design is helpful. And I think that is interesting, and something that is very different as a designer, I'll say, when you're working alone versus in community, when you have friends, even, and I can imagine with a classroom setting, you can be even more kind of structured, right, with feedback, and move from, oh, I have an idea, I'll just do it, that'll be simple, to, oh, yeah, the idea that you set out to do was a good one, but you didn't really do it, but actually the thing you made is still valuable, and here's why, and let's workshop that, and keep going, as opposed, there are branching pathways, or you want to go back and backtrack. Okay, if you really want it to be about, goblins doing mixology. Oh, sorry, that actually is a game that's cool.
It's a game.
Friends we met did. So anyway, I'm sure maybe they did this, but anyway, something like that. Then you have to, have those themes, and you went off somewhere and had other themes emerge. So yeah, it's a great question, Vex, and I think it's a good answer, Anthony. Let me turn it over, Chris, if you have any other substantive questions. We have a few minutes left.
Well, before we have to sign off, I did want to ask just about S.A.N specifically. I know that you kind of developed it kind of midway through starting the classes, but I was curious, like, what did the process for coming up with that look like? What inspired it? I mean, I know it's a very simple 1d6 system, but yeah, could you tell us about S.A.N, what the kind of like play loop looks like, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. S.A.N's kind of oh man, how do I describe S.A.N? It is really kind of a passion project that was birthed out of, again, just kind of witnessing what I was needing in the moment, right? When we talk about, like, I was doing the class and I was like, okay, the BRP like is great because it's flexible. You can kind of make it in any setting. But dang, is it complicated? So I was like, I just need something simple. I need something simple. The first semester we ran the class, I went out and I bought, the 7 set of dice for all the students in the class. I get, because when I play with the new player for the first time, my gift to them, I give them a set of dice.
You gotta give them the starter dice.
Yeah,
it automatically
exactly.
tunes into the dopamine rush that humans have for collecting things, and it just hooks you right away.
People love trinkets, myself included. We got to have trinkets. So I get him the 7, right? And that was great. My wallet was hurting, but that's fine. And I, but I was like, I need something simple, because they opened the box, they were looking at the dice, and they were like, what am I looking at right now? And some people knew and some people didn't, but they're like, what am I looking at? But everybody knows a D6. So the S.A.N system is built off of a D6, right? It's a D6 system in which there isn't necessarily a difficulty class. You roll on a table, right? Where, like 6 means you pass with flying colors. 1 means you fail with, I guess, flying colors, and then everything that ranges in between. And each number, it dictates who narrates how that goes, right? So if you roll, a 3, for example, and you fail, okay, you fail, but you also get to narrate how you fail, right? So you can kind of like take it easy on yourself, or you could be really hard on yourself. That's 100% your choice. You know what I mean? But it gives them the agency to be able to kind of fail forward. You know what I mean? Whereas, I think a lot of times, in many different systems, when you fail, it's like, okay, now the big scary GM's going to come and tell you that you broke both your legs, So this was an opportunity to kind of incorporate more player agency. Like I mentioned earlier, it stands for simplified, accessible, and narrative. And that's the three core tenets of what this game is supposed to be. It's a foundation. It's not meant to be played kind of as is, because there's no setting, right? It's not a setting, it's a mechanic. My hope is that people that decide they want to try it, or people decide they want to use it, they take it and they run with it, and they make their own games. It's under an open copyright. So it's under I forget the term for it, but it's in an open copyright, which means that, you can make your own games with it. You can develop your own worlds. You can do your own thing. Now, my wife will tell you that I'm the worst salesman possible, because if I can put it out for free, I will put it out for free. Because at the end of the day, just want people to experience TTRPGs. And that's what the S.A.N system is meant to do. It's a D6 system. It's got the table. Combat is optional and super simple, right? It's really meant to bring someone that has never picked up a TTRPG before, bring them into the fold and show them how awesome TTRPGs are.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, so many people, yourself included, have some version of Dungeons and Dragons, of the Dragon game, as kind of their first experience. And I don't know, the thing that I hear over and over again from people is like, I love it. The setting, loose setting is great, blah, 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 whatever. It's so complicated. And I do think that that's a huge barrier to entry. Whereas S.A.N, or I'm thinking about Caltrop Core, or other kind of very kind of simplified, unified systems that are, genre or setting agnostic, but really just focus on okay, what's the thing you want to do? Here's how you do it. Done, easy. I think that's such a benefit for new players.
Yeah, and I have had, and I want to continue to have those moments where, I'm sitting down with a student and they. My office is, just for context, my office is very decorated with nerd stuff everywhere. So I want a student to come in and be like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons, or oh, what is that? What kind of game is that? Oh, it's a TTRPG. Oh, I've never played a TTRPG before. What is that? And in that moment, I could put a D6 in front of them and say, would you like to learn how to play? You know what I mean? Have a scenario ready for them that they can just do and experience, because I think that is the best introduction to TTRPGs possible. It's just playing it. I tried to do all the other different types of introductions where I watched actual plays and I read the book. That was a mistake. I read the book, where I finished and I was like, I don't know what I just read. I'm so confused. I want to be able to say, sit down. I will show you how cool this is. And that's what the S.A.N system allows me to do, which is just D6.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of medium crunch and more simulations and stuff for running games with my friends. But I think if I was teaching a college class, to your point about S.A.N or Caltrip, it would be really fun because you could be like, let's make a game right now. We have 45 minutes. That's more than enough time. There's, you got a couple dice, you pick a couple scores, basically, a couple things are simulated, and it's additive, so you can always do more and make them into more kind of connected epicycles that become more sort of medium crunch. But I think it would be harder if someone was totally new to the hobby to be like, here's PBTA or the grit system, make a game. Or certainly, yeah, here's a D20 or D100 system, good luck. Here's table after table of things to sort of digest, or it just I've seen it because I'm a nerd and I like looking at complicated technical things anyway. It's my job outside of D&D land to look at complicated technical diagrams, but most people just hate it, so they instantly just lose any frame of reference. So I love that you're giving them something with D6s, universal, people already know what it is, and asking them to kind of participate and build narratives, and then it's only opening the door to do more with it. So, and also congrats on not only having the system but also getting out there with the license. We just finally are publishing our license just because we realized we had different games with slightly different rule sets, so we just spent a bunch of time trying to figure out internally, is it one system or many things or whatever. But I definitely think everyone should have a license that says make things with our system. Why have a system if it's fun if you don't want people to kind of use it? So that sounds great, and we'll definitely check it out and plug the links and whatever you got. So with that, we're at about time. Anthony, I definitely want to give you a chance if there's anything we haven't covered, anything you want to talk about. But yeah, I mean, Chris, did you have any more non-final questions?
I only have my final question remaining.
Okay. Well, then, Anthony, did you have any non-just plugging stuff, content topics you wanted to talk about we didn't get to?
Oh man, I feel like we've covered the gambit of stuff. I really appreciate getting the chance to come on here and talk about it. It's life's been crazy because we're about to welcome our first child.
Congratulations!
So really excited about. Thank you so much. So it's been nice to kind of refocus on this a little bit, just to as a reminder of how cool it is. So I really appreciate it.
It's cool stuff all around. Creating life, pretty cool. Yeah. Making games, pretty cool.
Absolutely.
It's all good.
100%. Yeah.
It's all creation over there in the Kurza household.
Yeah. The Kurzas just can't stop.
Awesome. Well, we will let you get back to that life making and getting ready for that. I'm sure you have a busy semester ahead, or maybe you have. I don't know if you have a term off given the impending Bambino, but either way. We will let you get back to it shortly. Last question, Chris. I feel like you might have one up your sleeve.
I sure do. Anthony, where can folks find you on the internet? How can we best support you? How can we get more people to pick up and play S.A.N?
Man, so in terms of trying to get content out there, Instagram, Anthony Kurza. Simple, easy. But on LinkedIn is where I like to kind of post some kind of like updates in terms of the education realm. So if you're ever interested in learning more about that, happy to put that out there. All of my games are on itch.io under Anthony Kurza, so easy to find. I do, for the most part, just try to put everything out there for free. So the big thing for me is that I love feedback, right? So if people are playing it, people are liking it, I'd love to hear it. If they hate it, it's going to hurt my feelings, but I'll hear it anyway. I'll hear it out, But those are kind of like my main spots right now. I'm looking to hopefully develop that a little bit more because I've got some really exciting projects coming up in the next year, about 3 or 4. So I'm excited to start rolling those out and to see what people think about them.
Awesome. Well, yeah, check out Anthony's Itch, which we'll have links and everything like that down in the show notes in the description. But yeah, I think that's it for Why We Roll for now. Thank you so much, Anthony Kurza, for joining us. Thank you, Wythe, for being just a good friend and a wonderful co-host.
Thank you, Chris.
I was waiting on mine.
Thanks to Vex. You're great. Thanks, Chris, for being amazing.
Thank you both. And thank you both
engineering the podcast,
for hanging out with me. This was great.
Yeah, no, thanks, Anthony. It's great to be in touch, and please keep us informed. And honestly, if I don't know if you have a Discord server, but we have an active Discord server. We'd love to have you join and just chat with us and tell us what you're up to. And same thing, feedback, tips. If students are looking for a place to play games, we're always interested in education, even though we're not currently doing that for a living. So thanks for sharing some of your reflections from the trenches, and best of luck. Honestly, as we say, we live in interesting times.
Sure do.
And I hope that you're still fighting the good fight, and more kids are coming on side. So yeah, everyone check out kurzplaysgames.itch.io, or you can just Google Anthony Kurza Itch. It pops right up. And thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Why We Roll.
Our theme music is by the brilliant Sam Tyndall and Arpline.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find us on all social media at Stillfleet. You can find out more about Danse Macabre, Stillfleet, and all of our games over at stillfleet.com.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.